Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. I hope everyone is doing good, inshallah. We'll try to kind of wait for 30 seconds before we, inshallah, start the show. And before I do the intros to our esteemed and honored guests for today, before I do that, I would be requesting whoever is kind of going to be joining to start, inshallah, sharing the live streams as we move on. That is number one. And the second thing is that, as you're aware, that this is the second show of the series which we are presenting today, which is on the topic of Islamic economics. And basically, inshallah, the plan is that we conduct at least 5 to 6 sessions on this subject, including a little bit of understanding on the topic of Islamic finance, where we will not be going into a lot of discussions into fintech or other areas, but we'll be touching the financial kind of the overall models and the kind of the availability of the different models within different spheres of Muslim countries, and also, what is the overall context in which Islamic economics and finance operates. So this is going to be our core focus. So I'll be requesting all of you to please start sharing the feeds, guys, as I normally request everyone. So in alhamdulillah nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh wa na'udzu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina may yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa may yudlil fala hadiya lahu wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh once again, everyone. So jazakallahu khair for joining in. Jazakallahu khair to our honored guest for today, Dr. Abdulaziz ISLAHI, who mashallah has been affiliated with King Abdulaziz University for a very, very long time. And if I'm not mistaken, almost I would say, I think 25 years, Dr. Abdulaziz, or maybe more than that, 30 years probably. And mashallah, Dr. Abdulaziz also has been the chief editor of the Journal of Islamic Economics, which normally, which is being released by the King Abdulaziz University. Dr. Muhammad Masoom, mashallah, he also is affiliated with King Abdulaziz University. And again, he's a professor of finance, insurance, fintech, and investment. He is still serving there. He continues to serve over there. And he has been a writer, both an academic and a contributor in the corporate world, as well as other industries as well. And his core focus, as we said, is the sharing of strategic and technical thoughts towards the advancement of Islamic finance and insurance, which is basically the kaful. Dr. Abdulaziz, mashallah, is moving on to India, inshallah, in the next few months. And there he's going to be joining the Institute of Quranic Studies. He's going to be the editor of a journal over there in Aligarh University. So this is our intro to the speakers. So once again, jazakallah khair for joining. And I will be requesting, as I normally do, like I said, please start, inshallah, sharing the feeds. So today, the topic, although we have announced the topic to be Waqf and Guilds, but our focus is going to be more towards Waqf. So if I may start with you, Dr. Abdulaziz, being the senior most here in this panel, could you define for us what is Waqf in Islam before we, inshallah, move to Dr. Muhammad, inshallah?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bishrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. First of all, let me thank you and audience for giving me this opportunity. Actually, I think it is very good that you will be allocating more time to Waqf. In fact, it needs the whole session for Waqf because of its importance.
Yeah.
And anyway, I think the Waqf is one of the miracles of Islamic economics, because you will not find any words of Waqf in Quran, even in Sunnah, the Hadith. There is the word of Waqf, but it is not in the sense of what Waqf are endowments we understand, but on the basis of the spirit of the Quran, overall teaching of the Quran, and because of certain evidences in the Hadith, the Muslims fuqaha have just built this institution of Waqf, and at present, you know how rapidly and how enormously this institution is increasing. As for definition of Waqf is concerned, actually this is also derived from the incidents which was found during the Prophet ﷺ time. And let me tell you also that the Waqf is one term. There is another term is Habs or Habus. This is more common in West and Northwest African countries, Marrakesh, Aljazair, Tunis. They call it Habs. And this Habas is actually has occurred in the hadith of Hazrat Umar Latan. Because let me tell the hadith. The hadith says that Hazrat Umar Latan just received a very good land from Khaybar. He wanted to just endow it in the way of Allah. He asked Prophet ﷺ that he has a very good type of land and he want to endow it in the way of Allah. The Prophet ﷺ said that okay, you can make a sadaqah of this. Actually, the sadaqah is also a term of our waqf. In earlier period, sadaqah, waqf or sadaqah, sometimes they are used. And we can say that every waqf is a sadaqah. Sadaqah means good deeds. So every waqf is a sadaqah. But every sadaqah is not a waqf. So there is a relation of, we call in Arabic as umum and khusus. Yeah. So this, so at the advice of Prophet ﷺ, Hazrat Umar made it a sadaqah, jalha sadaqah, and with the condition that this will not be sold, it will not be gifted, it will not be inherited, and it will be for the use of poor, needy, these wayfarers, or slaves, or fighters in the way of Allah, or guests, and there is no harm to be used part of it, one who is looking after it, but according to the established custom. So the word which Prophet ﷺ used was lo sheta habasta. To like, you can detain it. Habas.
Yeah.
So this word we find in hadith, but we will not find the word waqf. This was later on and especially used for this kind of endowment. So and as for definition is concerned, waqf is defined that taking out from one's ownership to give it in the ownership of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a certain property, and that property we use in the way of Allah with certain condition, and especially the fuqaha defined that the property should be have permanency, and it should not be finished, like real estate, like building, etc. And although nowadays people are making these conditions as easy, but the early fuqaha, they were very strict that what you endow, that should be, what you make a waqf, there should be a property, that should be should have permanency, that should be durable, that should not that should last long, because that is the reason that you know that fuqaha in the beginning they have not recognized the Aish Waqf. It was later was during the Ottoman period very much popularized, and nowadays it is very common. And people did not follow the earliest fuqaha's opinion about what is the any restriction about waqf, because they did not allow waqf of something which will soon will be disappear or will be consumed or not long lost. But
Okay.
all this building is based on ijtihad. As I told you, that the term has not occurred in the Quran or the Sunnah. It is mainly based on fuqaha's ijtihad. For those who think that the early fuqaha's ijtihad is binding, they do not want to deviate. And those who say that we are also man and they are also man. Only
Yeah.
Prophet ﷺ clear saying is binding, not any ijtihad. Ijtihad differs from time to time according to the circumstances, situations. Anyhow, so this is about waqf beginning or a definition.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. So basically, if we yani try to differentiate it from, let's say, from an historical angle, obviously, waqf from an historical perspective, we have understood it for kind of permanent nature property, which is yani put in trust in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is then going to be managed by a board of trustees or a management committee of trustees. And there is probably going to be an administrator who is going to be kind of administrating the waqf itself. Now, obviously, in the current context now, Dr. Abdulaziz, what is happening is that in the current kind of context, yani our definition of waqf mainly has been that waqf only or Auqaf is only for masajid, is only for mosques or for graveyards. Yani this is the kind of the normal understanding of a lay Muslim, of a common Muslim. So how do we make kind of the common Muslim understand that the waqf was probably one of the major cornerstones of the Islamic economic system historically? Yani how can we give examples and how can we explain this phenomena to our audience?
One thing should be noted that the term the administrative control or committees or these things, all these are new developments.
New developments, yeah.
In the beginning, actually the one who made endowment, he just appointed someone as Mutwalli, the caretaker. Hazrat Umar Latalan, whose incidence is considered as the very cornerstone or the first instance of endowment, and many rules have been derived from that hadith, that incidence. He made Hazrat Hafsa, his daughter, the Prophet ﷺ wife, and our mother, Hazrat Hafsa bin Umar bin Khattab, as the first caretaker. Although it is notable that his other brothers were there, but of her brothers, he made Hazrat Hafsa as the first Mutawalliya, her caretaker of them. And this was situation continued for a very long time, that works were not assigned to a committee or to government control, etc. These are the later development. Of course, this is you can say the good development, because after a few generations of Mutawallis, generally the control became very loose, and as you know what happens, different kind of misuse of the property occurred. So nowadays, and there is of course since many centuries, the government saw that the waqf are misused, so it established Waqf ministry, Waqf board, and Waqf committees also are made. I think it's a good thing, good development that a Waqf endowment maker or Waqif, it is called in Waqif, the Arabic term is Waqif, one who makes the Waqf. The Waqif should appoint a committee, it is better. And one of the headed by Hussein Mutawalli. It should not be left here to a single person. That is a good thing. This was not found in the beginning. But to altogether ignore the Mutawalli, I think this will discourage the Waqf creation.
Okay. Yeah. Now, so basically, from a current perspective, from a practical perspective, how can the Waqf be implemented in the current economic climate, apart from the areas of masajid, let's say, and other kind of, the social development projects like graveyards? How can additional, areas be touched? What are the other options which are available?
Really, Waqf was never only for masajid and for for graveyards. From very beginning, we find that Waqf were made for so many charitable works, and it is people have to be educated that charity is not only confined to mosque and not only to graveyard. It is the outside graveyard and around the mosque also. So educating people is necessary, especially, for example, these days that modern education, technology, etc. That should be a work for this, because in the history we find there are any hundreds of example of different kind of work since very long time. During Prophet Sallallahu for example, some of the Sahaba made work a house that should be provided accommodation to widows and poor. And they made work of water sources to provide waters, and so on. So it was not confined from any for the mosque and graveyard. Actually, mosque and graveyard, you can say that without declaration they are work. But the other, of course, the Waqf maker or Waqif should have intention, should be explicit, and should clearly write about it. And here one thing also we should know and remember, that there is a fuqaha's rule that shartul waqif nas. And if a work maker make under condition, this guy like a text. Most of people just thought that this text is in the sense of like text of Quran Hadith. No, Billah, this is not correct. And Hazrat Ibn Taymiyyah, now Ibn Taymiyyah had made it clearly that this is a misunderstanding, that a condition made by a waqif is like a text of the Quran and Hadith. What is the sense of this? That just clear in expressing the intention of the waqif. As nas is clear, or a nas, a ayah or a hadith is clear about its meaning. The same way, the nas of or a text or the condition of the waqif maker is like a nas in expressing what was the intention of the waqf maker. That's all. It is not having so sanctity or binding or nothing, because in changing situation, there may be need to make any interference in or change the condition or modify it. That's all.
Okay, Jazakallah khair for that. So basically, if one of the questions which normally people ask is that can we make an niyyah for an investment into a waqf? Can, for example, a waqf be used for profitable purposes?
Actually, there is one condition that it should not diminish the work purpose because it is considered that the work should have permanency, should be permanent. Although you see, if you take in the meaning of sadaqah, especially I can mention here, Dr. Munzar Kahaf, he has gone to the extent that, of course, it is not any work in the sense of what earliest Fuqaha said, but in the sense that the meaning of sadaqah, one can make his pension as a waqf, one can make his salary as waqf. That means it is work, temporary work, we can say,
Hmm.
or work for a time period. It is not any. So I think there is no harm in this because, as I told, that most of the provisions and rules of work are they are based on any ijtihad, and that ijtihad was made according to the time in our period in which ijtihad was made, according to environment, according to available opportunities, etc. Anyhow, almost this is considered as a must that any interference should not just finish work, especially if it is in the real sense of the word.
Okay, mashallah. Dr. Masoom, can you hear us? Apologies, I think you have a number of connectivity problems. Can you hear us? Yes, Dr. Masoom, can you hear us?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, Dr. Masoom, we can. I think we'll put ourselves on mute and basically, inshallah, so that you're able to speak. So the question to you, Dr. Masoom, is that basically, how can the waqf be implemented in today's day and age? And we'll put ourselves on mute so you can speak, inshallah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I'm so sorry because the connection is not so clear. But then let me explain. In fact, the Waqf is used to be, this defined, and this Waqf can be for the mosque, for madrasa, for graveyards, and this road and so on. But now in the modern time, the Waqf in the Islamic economy, it is defined differently and moderately, rationally, whereby the Waqf can be an instrument or the vehicle to provide economic package, especially in the SME and also the micro level. So now, today, what we can see, can you hear me? This workforce is not only confined within masjid and also the limited sectors, but it is also a vehicle which will play a greater role in the SME development, in the public sector development, development, and so on. For example, now we have the idea of cash Auqaf and also the temporary Auqaf. That's Waqf Muwaqqat, Waqf muakkad is like we have the doctrine in the Islamic history, al-maniha, of the property or the asset is going to be perpetual, but it is on the subject matter or the, any property is going to be this rendered in the interest of named beneficiary that we can observe now, and that is mainly on cash Auqaf actually. But then, to my humble understanding, the cash Auqaf is not only cash Auqaf, but the property Auqaf, and also these which are saved subject.
Yeah, Dr. Masoom, we unfortunately are not able to hear you very properly. I think what we can try to do is to, unfortunately, I don't have an option where you can join by phone. Otherwise, I could have made you join by phone. Yeah, so I think I'm not really sure. We'll, yani, to be honest, we couldn't really understand what you said. You just did mention that the Waqf has a role to play in today's day and age, and you mentioned about the cash Auqaf, which actually is going to be helping us not only in the private sector, but also in the public domain. Yeah, so this is the problem. I think he doesn't have a good connection, so I don't think so it will work, Dr. Abdulaziz, with him. So we'll continue, inshallah, with you, Dr. Abdulaziz, inshallah. Now, we have seen historically that there have been certain issues with Waqf. So, for example, one of the finer kind of points which normally people bring in is that how can we trust the administrators of the Waqf, because they are mainly the family members maybe. So how can we, if we want to raise up the concept of the Waqf and give it that level of authenticity, then how can we take certain measures where the administration of the Waqf actually is in sound hands and it is more of a guarantee? How can we do that?
As I mentioned, the Waqf maker, of course, has certain rights. He's giving a Waqf, and he has right to appoint someone, the caretaker, only. And in the beginning, there was only one person. But it is good idea that instead of making, as I mentioned earlier, that instead of making a single person the caretaker, it is the committee idea is better. A few people, because Islam emphasizes on shura, so there should be a committee of shura. Of course, it may be necessary that in that the mutawalli should be one of the important figure, maybe heading or a decision maker in case of controversy. Now, even the Waqf board should give this a place, should accept this. That any committee, the mutawalli should be one of the members at least, because if you take out from the Waqif's family, is so this may not be considered as good for Waqf maker, and this will be a kind of disincentive, because as far the committees are concerned, as administrative bodies are concerned, even the ministries are concerned, they are also making corruption. So in India, for example, we find that how this Waqf board and a member of board, they can making money or selling the Waqf properties. So if a Mutawalli is selling, I'm not justifying, but if Mutawalli is selling Waqf property, he has right. His forefathers have, also I'm not saying that this should be done, but one can say it is justified. but a third person just take out this. I don't think is correct. The important thing is that there should be honest members and a committee, and one of the family members of the work maker is a dynasty should be at least included in this. I think this he will be more attached to this work than a third person. He may like that the work which was made by his father and forefather, this should continue. It should not be just finished by some people who are selfish. They want to serve their own purpose.
Correct. Okay, that's. I hope, inshallah, that this question will be clarified in the minds of the audience. Now, the next question is, as we were discussing yesterday, is that can zakat be used to make an investment in waqf? What are the Muslim fuqaha, and what is their opinion on this issue?
Waqf can be waqf amount, waqf money can be invested with the condition that there should be surety and guarantee that it will not cause such a loss that waqf is finished forever, because waqf is considered as to lost, and therefore a condition was that some durable things like land, buildings, etc., should be made at waqf. And in early period, even the cash was not considered as suitable for waqf. Although at present, this controversy has gone since Ottoman period. So there is no harm that waqf amount is invested. Recently, our institute has introduced a paper, a course on investment of waqf property, waqf. So, and they have, there is no harm. People are thinking to this aspect that waqf should be developed and its amount should be increasing instead of just being uninvested and finished.
Because obviously, normally what is seen is that the waqf properties are located in very kind of good localities, good locations, high value properties, And in fact, I was speaking to someone last week where their father had a very very good property. It was more than 90 crore Indian rupees, which was given in waqf. And when their father died, the total value of the property was something like 4 crore Indian rupees, and now it has gone up to 90. So what I was suggesting to them was that maybe have a discussion with some fuqaha, with some Muslim scholars, to maybe sell the property to start a new waqf. So would that be allowed? Because the concept historically has been that the waqf is a permanent thing, but obviously I think the recent scholarship has made it open that waqf can be temporary and its context can be changed. Is that the case, Dr. Abdulaziz?
Yeah, actually, these issues have been discussed at various platforms. That whether if, for example, waqf objective now is no more important. For example, someone has made a waqf for water source or well water. Now you see these days, this is something which no one is using. Whether that place, that well, can be promoted and made as a, for example, latest or most modern source of water, kind of pumping station can be established there or something like. So I think these issues have been discussed at various levels. Even Allama Ibn Taymiyyah has said that if a purpose of waqf is now has gone, so the amount of waqf can be invested with similar any objectives.
Okay, similar objectives.
Yeah, can be invested.
Mm.
And so it is a very good and that the lands are real estate located at prime locations. There should be any found out ways how to develop and make it more efficient, more fulfilling the objective of the Waqf maker. And our latest thinker have just discovered some of the methods like BOT and or diminishing musharaka to develop such locations, such things. I think it depends to see what the FEC Academy is, because this should not be left to individuals.
Correct.
This
It
kind
shouldn't
of
be left to
decision,
individuals. Yeah.
yeah, this should be left to the shura, or what is called in Islamic fiqh ahl al-hal wal aqd. Those who are decision making, like ulama, or even the government, if a Muslim government, and honest or work board. But of course, a blanket permission will may harm the work also.
Correct.
There should be effort that work should exist to remain and may fulfill its objectives more efficiently and more effectively.
Okay. So one of the questions which someone from the audience has asked, Brother Imran, that would funds generated from Waqf be used as an income to feed family of administrator or the caretaker, or does it need to go back into Waqf's maintenance or development?
No, it can be done, but it should be according to Maruf, according to established custom, that the administrator should not take a lion share. That should be, because the Hazrat Umar who made the first work, and whose example is considered as the basis for later development, later ijtihad. He also said that his family can can take from that, according to even the work the manager, that he should use according to Maruf. His words are that he that said that لا جناح على من وليها أن يأكل منها بالمعروف. There is no harm that the one who is taking care of it to eat from it according to good established custom, the Maruf. So there is no harm. La
There is
junaha.
no harm. No.
Not he should not be allowed to just take the lion's share and deprive the other entitled beneficiaries.
No. Okay. Jazakallah khair for that. Now, we'll kind of obviously we won't be going for a long time today. Unfortunately, Dr. Masoom has kind of he's had connection issues. So I'll ask the audience to ask any other questions if you have. Otherwise, from my side, I'll just be asking a couple of additional questions. Now, Dr. Abdulaziz, from your experience, have you had any kind of experience with the Islamic banks or kind of the Waqfs which have been established by the Islamic banks? Are you aware of any banks which have been established under a Waqf setup?
Actually, in Ottoman period and later post-Ottoman period, there was a Waqf bank, but unfortunately, it was not interest-free.
Okay.
It was based on a Waqf property, Waqf amount, but it was not in the sense of Islamic banking, what we understand nowadays. But I recently heard that they have now established another bank based on Waqf, where they are following the rules and restrictions of Islamic banking, that is being interest-free and using those products which are permitted in Islamic system. Otherwise, the Waqf bank doesn't mean that really it is interest-free.
So from that angle, obviously, it's been because I was listening to Professor Habib of Durham University, and he was mentioning that there was one experience in Dubai where a Waqf bank was established, but unfortunately, it couldn't carry on due to the lack of funds. So it couldn't really function beyond a couple of years. So obviously, as the Waqf are normally a microeconomic, obviously, instrument, which are normally used to serve a particular area, a particular city, a particular community, a particular municipality, but obviously I think the jurists have come up with with means and with instruments where Waqf can actually be implemented at kind of a larger scale, like kind of a macroeconomic scale. So, for example, if we look at the Waqf which is established, the King Abdulaziz endowment in Mecca, which is that particular Waqf, which is catering for the needs of maybe the upkeep of the Haramain or the Haram itself. Or also the Zamzam Tower in Mecca, which was established under a Sukuk arrangement, with a Waqf, again, a Waqf type of arrangement with an investment in it. So these, obviously, Dr. Masoom maybe was beginning to mention certain modern trends, and I would actually paste the link to his recent book as well, which he has recently published on Waqf, which then people can, inshallah, have a look through. The last question from my side, Dr. Abdulaziz, is going to be that what is your recommendation in today's days and age? What is your recommendation for people? Shall they continue to kind of donate to these particular wakuf which are in existence, or they should try to let's say catapult the concept of waqf to serve their communities and have additional means of even income generation for a particular set of communities? Yani, what is your recommendation? How to go about it in modern times?
Before I answer BCC, there should be a small correction.
Sure.
Please don't use the term microeconomics.
Okay.
You can use microfinance and microfinance, but don't use the word microeconomics and microeconomics, because according to these two terms, Waqf is an institution of microeconomics, because microeconomics is something we cover the whole economy, like national income, national level of employment, national price inflation, which cover the whole country. So Waqf is basically one of the small component of the whole economy.
Overall, yeah, the overall economy.
Yeah. So it is not correct to use microeconomics. It is an institution of microeconomics.
Sure.
Of course, you can use microfinance and microfinance.
Sure.
And finance is also are two types. One is public finance, the other is private finance. Public finance is a subject of microeconomics. Public finance, government finance, because it covers the whole economy. But Waqf, even it is a Makkah tower or any Waqf, see, it is having a limited or a small scope.
Correct.
So it is, you can say microfinance, of course, a big finance, and or microfinance for a small level individual, poor, village, etc. Anyhow, so you ask about about making an endowment.
Yeah, in the current time, what is the best way to go about it?
First of all, you should know, that it is reported that every Sahaba who has some wealth or income, he made endowment, he made Waqf. And Waqf was made by almost most of the well-to-do Sahaba. And it has been encouraged. And actually, I should mention there are two ways to make Waqf. One is that you can make Waqf in your own life. You can be also part of beneficiary is allowed. And also, you see, Waqf you can make for your family, the family Waqf, or you can make for charitable purposes. So there is so much any flexibility one can choose. Another important thing which is generally not mentioned, that is the wasiya, will. Waqf has not been mentioned in the Quran, but wasiyah, it has been wasiyat. What do you call wasiyat? Or will. That has been mentioned in the Quran and Hadith, and there is Hadith that Prophet ﷺ has allowed. Before I mention that, I should make another clarification. One very famous writer on Waqf, his specialization or is internationally known scholar on Waqf. He once questioned why it is so that and in his own life one can give the whole property in Waqf, but after his death he cannot make Waqf up to 1/3. Usually he is not clear about the difference between Waqf and Wasiyah. Waqf, you make in your life, you are entitled of your life, your property, you are owner of the property, but after you are dead, you are no more owner of the property. Owner of property are those who are surviving. But in Hadith it is said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed you up 1/3 that you can use for your making good deeds even when you are no more in life. As you know, there is famous hadith when a person dies, his all good deeds are stopped except three things. One who makes sadaqah jariyah, one who has taught someone some good things, and the other is his sons or his make dua for him. So at least one can make work from 1/3 of his property. And I think no one should do, because after die, who will get the money? He'll have no use in the hereafter. Why you should not make arrangement for yourself? Just at least use up to 1/3 to create a kind of work. Especially I mentioned that in the old days when there was system of joint family, especially in Indian subcontinent, you see, then making such a wasiya or work was difficult, because the whole family was just living on the same collective property. But nowadays, when every son used to go and establish his own property, his own house. One goes to America, another goes to England, the third one goes to Middle East, and mother and father remains in their house in a certain city.
Correct.
Maybe after a few days, the old age houses will develop. Because I know many situations that the one who is a more noble son goes far away, and the one who is a little bit unqualified or he remains in the Middle East. Otherwise, America and England. So what I say that, of course, people have to be educated, have to be encouraged to make endowment, and if you understand that nowadays it is easy to make endowment through wasiya, because when your money which will leave will be no more of your benefit. So why not to use 1/3 up to make wasiya? Through wasiya you can establish a sadaqah jariyah, you can work. But in life, one can, there is no limit.
There's no limit. But here, there are two questions, Dr. Abdulaziz, which actually spring to mind. And in fact, I've got an example. I know someone who actually, in order to deny his children, that gentleman actually made a trust and put everything in the trust itself. So then you have these types of cases. May Allah make it easy for the people, obviously, but obviously that is something which which is fine, he has done it, but obviously it's not recommended from an Islamic point of view. You shouldn't be denying your inheritors, obviously. From what do you suggest, Dr. Abdulaziz?
If you someone making this kind of the thing, it is old age, when his senses are not very stable, then of course interference can be made. But if someone makes any with good sense and when is any young or when say there is no any health is correct any okay, then of course we can he has any right to even if he doing this with the intention to deprive his any families from his wealth, then he can do it, but he will be responsible or
Answerable. He'll be responsible.
Allah
Yes.
subhanahu wa ta'ala.
No.
Because intention is very important. If you're doing for the sake of sawab, not for the sake of sawab, but for the sake of inflicting harm to his survivors, of course he will be responsible for this. And actually, Waqf has been also misused for this kind of things since long time. Even sometimes, for example, a minister of Islamic government, he collected money from different and corrupt sources. So instead of to find way how to not expose it or to make that it should be used by the government, he made a waqf type. So intention is very important. Intention.
Correct. Okay, Jazakallah khair. I think that's really very well said. Jazakallah khair, Dr. Abdulaziz. I think we have just one question from the audience. We'll take it. That could Waqf be dedicated to animals? That is grasslands, so shepherds could herd their sheep and make a living.
If you study the history of Waqf, you see, you will be astonished. For how many purposes Waqf were made. You see, Ibn Battuta mentions that he reached when Syria, he found that Waqf was made even for animals, and when also to help those servants who made a kind of by mistake something harm to his owner, to save him from being angry or to be punished. And he gave an example that a boy who was carrying a earthen pot, he just slipped from his hand and it was broken. He was weeping. So he was provided by such a waqf. So there is no limit to make waqf for marriage, for helping poor, for education, for any good purpose. There is no restriction, but it should be for any good purpose. That is important.
No.
Whether
Okay,
anyone
Jazakallah khair.
or
Human beings. Okay, Jazakallah khair. I think we'll call it today. Salah Azan has been called here in Jeddah. So once again, Jazakallah khair, Dr. Abdulaziz, for your time. May Allah reward you, inshallah. And for the audience, thanks a lot for joining in, inshallah. Please share the feeds, guys. Inshallah, we'll try to bring in Dr. Masoom again in some other show, inshallah. And inshallah, benefit from his wisdom. So next week's show, we'll continue on the subject of Islamic economics. But now we'll be gradually moving towards Islamic finance topics a little bit, inshallah, from next week. So stay tuned. This will be now the new timing of our show every week, inshallah, from 7:05 p.m. Saudi time, which is 9:05 p.m. Pakistan Standard Time. So jazakumullah khair, everyone. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair.
Barakallah.